Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today we're diving into something that so many of us think about or have thought about, but often feel stuck figuring it out. What's next for us? Joining me for this conversation is Shannon Russell, a woman who knows firsthand what it means to pivot with purpose. Shannon is a career transition and business coach, a speaker, the author of Start Your Second Act, How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life. And she's the host of the Second Act Success Career podcast. Shannon started out producing television for major networks like MTV, E!, TLC, and Yahoo. And then she took a leap into entrepreneurship, opening a successful STEM franchise for kids, and is now using her experience to guide other women as they navigate career and life transitions. Shannon brings a unique perspective to reinvention, and today she's here to help us explore how we can each step into our next chapter with clarity and confidence and produce the life we want to live. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Same here. You've had such a diverse career. Is there anything in particular that jumps out that you attribute landing in this space, wanting to write this book in particular, and being so passionate about helping women make those big moves, as you call them, in life?
Nothing in particular other than the fact that I think I was able to do it, that I was able to leave my dream career and find something else that filled me and gave me purpose. And I think just being able to achieve that and find that when I was at a very delicate age and having two young kids and, having to reshape my, identity, if you will, being able to do that and accomplish it made me say, okay, I want to help other women who are feeling the same way I did and in that same space. And now's the time to do that. So it's kind of become my mission, seeing that, it's not as hard as it looks.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because to some, you started in what would look like a dream job, right? You interned at MTV, I think, right out of college. Mm-hmm. And then you launched into this career of I don't mean just, but producing at all these, I'm going to say fancy networks, right? Like they're known networks. And on paper, I think people would think, wow, she had a really cool gig. I would love that job. But you shifted. So talk to us a little bit about how you recognize when you need to make a shift like that.
That's an excellent question, because it's not easy to know that. And this was my dream career since I was about 5 years old. I knew I wanted to work in Hollywood. And so achieving it and loving it, it wasn't a job that was toxic that I wanted to leave. It just was, as soon as I had my first son, I was living in Los Angeles and I just felt the shift. I felt something change within me where I no longer wanted to go on the red carpets and go to work on shoots that were in other states or countries. And my priorities shifted. And then we moved to the East Coast and I got pregnant with my second little boy. And that's when it all changed for me, where I said, you know what? I can't miss another birthday. I can't miss a Halloween. I want to be there at bedtime. And so I was able to say, after, a lot of thinking and soul searching, okay, I accomplished that. So let's celebrate it and say, okay, but what's next? I'm still young enough. There's always time to try again and do something different using those skills and experience. And let me challenge myself to figure out what that is. And I think it's that moment of just realizing that maybe all the pieces that you've worked really hard to align don't align anymore in different stages of your life. And that's what occurred to me as a self-aware person, to really take that moment to pause and turn inward and say, okay, how am I feeling and what else can I do?
Yeah.
So I think it's just for other people to recognize that feeling and take that moment to turn inward and ask yourself how you're doing.
I just did an episode, my last episode, it won't be back to back with this when it goes live, but was with Katie Kremitzos, who was the founder and runs the Women's Meditation Network. And the whole conversation started around the pause, right? And listening to your intuition. And you just said the same thing. So my question will be similar to the one I asked her. How did you know to listen to that? Because so many of us don't listen to that, right? But you did. Do you know why you did?
I think because it had been brewing in me for about 3 years. So at that time, I had a 3-year-old, and then my Oprah aha moment was I was 8 months pregnant in heels, running through the Times Square subway station in Manhattan, trying to catch my bus to get home and pick up my 3-year-old from daycare. And it was in that moment, Marianne, was every day for me because I had such a commute from the city to the suburbs. And I just remember that moment, tears just started streaming down my face, and I thought I wasn't going to make the bus and I was going to have to call my parents or someone to help again. And I just said, no, like, this is not the way I want the future to keep going, especially when I have another human to raise.
Yeah.
And so it just was that moment, I think, that truly was this out of body experience where I did have to say something is not right. And I'm the one to fix it. And if I don't ask myself how that's going to happen or give myself permission, then it's not going to change. And it took a lot of time after that, but I knew the wheels really started turning at that moment.
I love that. And I love that you were tapped in enough to listen to it and not keep dismissing it. But let's talk a little bit about someone that isn't pregnant, that doesn't have a human growing in them, which, you tend to notice a little bit more than the little signs. So what do you say to the person who maybe doesn't even realize it yet? There aren't such obvious signs. What do they look for?
I think you look for the things such as waking up in the morning. Are you looking forward to your day? When you go to sleep at night, are you dreading tomorrow? How do you like interacting with your coworkers, doing the work that you do? Are you constantly stressing about leaving work because you have obligations with your family outside of work? All of those feelings about how your day is going, because if you spend every day feeling those feelings of dread and just feeling stuck, it doesn't lead to happiness in the long run. And it leads to that constant state of uneasiness. And so I think recognizing those signs first, and then just saying, I can really love my job, but it doesn't feel right. It's stressing me out in other ways, or I don't like this and it's toxic and I'm not myself when I'm working. And, if you just feel like there's those voices in our heads that are speaking to us of like, maybe I can try this, or, I've always wanted to write that book, or, travel here, whatever it is, like, listen, just give yourself that pause, maybe over your lunch break or before bed or over your morning coffee, to just say, okay, what is this voice trying to tell me? And then decide from there, there's little steps, like, what can I do? And it took me a moment after I decided to leave TV. I got a 9-to-5 job that was very toxic and awful, but I thought I needed to do that.
Yeah.
And it was me, again, crying in the car one day over my lunch saying, this cannot be every day moving forward. And it was just, again, another sign of, okay, something needs to change. So just listening to those signs and those voices, I think, help so much.
I think you're right. And I experienced something similar, but I do think that for many of us, we push those voices down for a really long time. So I think that's a key message, is to start listening to it and sort of start letting it bubble up and just explore it with curiosity, even if you don't do anything right away. Mm-hmm. So you'll start getting more information from that voice. I want to talk to you about, you mentioned separating yourself from the identity you had when you had the producing job. And I think so many women, probably people in general, get tied to their identity and they feel lost without it. I mean, and we're going through a time where a lot of people are being separated from their jobs, maybe not even something they want to do, but does happen to them. And I think you can go through this period of, who am I and where's my value? Because I no longer sit in that role or in that title. So how do you help women kind of separate their worth from the work that they do?
Yeah, and I think all of those feelings are valid, right?
Yes.
Because you spend so long, or we choose our career in our 20s, early 20s, and then we progress and we climb that ladder. But I think when you do listen to the voices and you realize either you want to make the change or the change is thrust upon you, that you can say, okay, I want to not necessarily grieve that. I want to celebrate what I did and know that those skills and experience come with me as I move into the next role. And that really we have so many titles, right? Partner, daughter, whatever it might be, mom, all of those titles make us who we are as a person. And it's the same with our work titles. So I think for me, I had to say, wow, and especially in the entertainment industry, everyone knows you for who you are. When I got married, I didn't change my last name because everyone hires based on who you are and who you know. And so I think I had to go through that as well. But I just had that mindset shift of no, I'm still the same person. And as I move into this next venture in my life, all those skills and experience are only going to make me that much better at this next role because they're coming with me. So when you think about that, and then also I think, Marianne, to think about the fact that you can always go back to that. You can always go back to what it was that you did. No one's taking that away from you. So whether it's at your same company, a different company, you still know how to be that teacher, producer,
Yeah.
marketing executive, whatever it is. So that gives people some pause and, safety to think about that as well. But then just to think like, gosh, I'm going to get a chance to build onto my life resume and I'm going to get to challenge myself in new ways and take this part of me and bring it to this next act of mine and to look at it like an adventure and an opportunity for personal growth, I think. And that can be exciting, but it's getting over that shift, I think, that scaredness into that, wow, this is actually going to be a challenge, and a challenge is exciting.
Yeah. One of the things that I think helps, which I think some of us struggle with, is separating ourselves from the roles that we were in and identifying our skills that can move with us, right? And this seems to be a reoccurring theme that keeps coming up. So that tells me I need to keep talking about it. But I feel like myself and many of those around me, I don't think it pops out as a natural thing to say, oh, I did this thing for 25 years. So therefore I know how to do this and how to do this and how to do this. We tie it to the role. Mm-hmm. So what do you tell people who maybe haven't really figured out yet how to separate that? Is there an exercise or is there a reflection or is there anything you can tell us to help them start really just thinking about the skills they have versus the role they have?
Pen and paper. It's as simple as just it for me is working with my clients, having a pen and paper to write down every skill, every role within your role that you've done, and not just in your current career, but in the things that you've done in your past. Maybe you were a waitress, maybe you worked in retail. Write down all of those things. And then you have this long list because I think you can relate. Like so many of us look at that list and say, well, everyone can do that. Nothing's special here, right?
Yes.
But it's the furthest from the truth. You're just so close to it that it seems like everyone can do it because maybe everyone at your company can or on your team.
Yeah.
But when you really start to look at that list, you say, wow, there really is so much here. And then the important part I always suggest is to look at that list and cross out the things or circle the things that you no longer want to do. Maybe you really are good at numbers, but you no longer want to work in numbers. This way, you know that you have this list of the skills that you want to take with you into your next act or that are possible, something that you can take with you. And then you start to feel that sense of pride when you look at that list and you can look at the roles that you're thinking about and see what aligns. But you're right. Like just none of us think that all of these things we've done are special. And we don't think that there are so many things, but it can be the littlest of things like, spreadsheets and, being a leader and giving presentations. All of that means a lot and can be transferred.
Yeah. It's identifying those things. But I do love making sure you take a moment to figure out the ones you don't want to do, because you might be really good at something, but don't really want to do it as you go forward. So that's That's a good tip. I know one of the things you do with the people that you work with is help them build an exit strategy. Talk to us a little bit about that. What are some of the steps or some of the things that you do to put in place?
Yes, I think the exit strategy is essential because you don't want to, as much as we might want to actually, but say I quit and just start over and stomp out of the office. You want to have your transition be very methodical and strategic so that you are setting yourself up for success. So I like the exit strategy where we can do the not fun stuff like dive into your finances and really make that timeline of how to get you there. Because a lot of times you might look and say, oh, you know what? I might need to work for another 6 months. I need that, cushion.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're going into entrepreneurship, it might be a year or 18 months or so until you're taking that revenue and putting it into your own bank account because a lot of what you make in a business in the beginning goes right back into the business. So just taking that time to look at the finances, look at what you can do. Do you even know what you want to do? A lot of times clients will come and have tons of ideas and we have to whittle it down and do that research.
Yeah.
So I think going through those pieces and then making that timeline to say, I need to work for another 6 months or a year. And then what can I actually do while I'm working? And there's so many things you can actually do to start preparing for that career change or building that business while you're working. So you don't feel like you're wasting time. You're actually getting a paycheck and starting to get things together.
Talk to me a little bit about that process you just mentioned about trying to whittle it down, because I think you're right. I think for many people, they don't know exactly what they want to do. They might know they want to transition. They might know the thing they're in isn't working for them, but they have no idea what they want next. How do you get there?
Well, I'm certified in UMAP, which is a career assessment. So I go through that with all of my clients, and that kind of helps us create this profile of kind of like what we were talking about with the pen and paper of what it is that you have, your skills and strengths, but the things that you might not want to do any longer. So it's kind of a profile that helps you stay on the right track to get to where you want to be and choose that next act that is right for you. Because oftentimes we'll see something that someone else is doing and we think, oh, that sounds perfect for me. But I really have my clients and suggest to everyone that they start researching what the day-to-day in that role is, because maybe you'll look at it and I've seen this happen more than once where they start researching and say, oh, I don't want to do that. I didn't realize there was so much admin or so much money or so much whatever it is. And so you can start to learn about the role and maybe cross it off your list if it's not right, or really start to learn and, oh, wow, that is exactly what I want to do. And you learn more and then you get more confident, and that confidence to learn before you leap is going to really bring you to success that much quicker too, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. And I think that trying to find somebody in that role and either see if you can shadow them or at least buy them a coffee and talk to them about what their day-to-day looks like. I think that talking to a real person about it helps you get closer to that information you're talking about. I think the more you can learn, the better off you'll know if you're suited for that role.
Yes, absolutely.
As I started thinking about putting this together and the work that you're doing, I started thinking I feel like this is really needed for my target demographic of listener, which is somebody in midlife. And I think there's a ton of people going through transition right now, again, whether they chose it or it's being pushed on them. So I think there's a big need. But then I started thinking about the next generation and the millennials. And I think, well, for me, that's the next generation, the millennials. So I think they're doing it differently. I think they're doing it almost intuitively, where my generation, we weren't brought up that way. We were brought up in that cusp of still staying forever and not transitioning. So do you see this changing? Do you see that too? Or am I seeing something you're not seeing, or is that what you see as well?
Yeah, I am seeing that too. And I'm seeing that they are more, I don't want to say wanting that instant gratification, but they're more in tune with listening to that voice in their head per se.
Yeah.
And that whereas we were taught, well, you choose this, in high school or college and you stick with it through retirement, just like my parents both did, and maybe yours as well. And so that was what we were told. But I think the younger generation is thinking a little bit more of like, well, you know what? Maybe I can make that shift. Like it's becoming more okay. And they're thinking about it earlier than maybe we will now in midlife.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Me too.
I love even my kids who are 10 and 13. I'm trying to teach them and show them that yes, you can be a doctor, but you know what? You can also have a business on the side and you can start a podcast. And just so you have these extra things that are giving you maybe streams of income, but other things that you own, that you don't have to choose just one thing. You can do it all. And I think that's just hopefully a lesson that younger generations will take with them right out of school and carry with them.
Yeah, I love everything you said and agree. I think when we say do it all, we just have to choose how we frame that, right? Because I don't think you can do it all at the same time.
Right.
But I think letting them know that they can make multiple choices, it's not something that they have to follow forever is fabulous. And I do think they're getting it right. I agree with you. So you work with tons and tons of women on this, and this is now the core of your message and you're passionate about it. Are there any patterns that keep popping up for you that you see with the population that you're working with?
I see a lot of women who know that they are ready to make that change, but they're very apprehensive.
Yeah.
I'll have women who have calls with me and then they say, okay, I'm ready. Okay, I've got to wait and I'm going to come back to you in a few months. And then, it's like, and then they finally do, but there's that gap of time. And I don't want to say that they wasted, but there's a good amount of time that it took them to realize that they are really ready to make that change.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we hold everything together in our family and we're in charge of whether it's our older parents or our kids. And we're in charge of so much that it sometimes feels like a selfish act in a way, to make that change and make that shift. And I have a lot of women who say, well, who am I to want to do this? Should I just wait until the kids are out of the house? Should I wait until retirement? And, that's when I say, no, because you get one life and you don't want to have those regrets if it never happens. So let's do it in a strategic way and plan it out, like we mentioned earlier, so that you can get there and not cause chaos in your family. It is doable to do that. It just takes maybe some planning with someone else or having that accountability to partner to make sure that you can get from point A to point B. But I think that's the biggest commonality, is just feeling scared because of the chaos they might cause in their family. And then, of course, there's always what other people will think, which I think all of us can relate to, especially if you've been this for so long and now you're venturing to something else. It's getting past that mindset shift as well, of not really wanting to listen to the naysayers and caring what they say. I always say thank you so much, but I'm confident in what I'm doing, but I appreciate your input.
I love that.
And just keep going.
I love that. As you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that the need is so there for people that are thinking about this already. But I also think it's such a great thing to think about, even if they're in a job that they're okay with, or they're a stay-at-home mom or whatever. I just think that in midlife is a fabulous time. Most of us start having more time to self-reflect. We start slowing down a little bit. We really appreciate our peace, and we really are starting to look at things in a different lens. And I just think what a fabulous time it is to have these conversations and explore these things, because I hear from so many people that say, oh, I always wanted to be this when I was little, but they're not that. And they don't say it in a way that they're wishful, but they say it in a way that's reflective. But I think, why not explore that? If you always wanted to be that, why not explore it? It doesn't mean you have to do it in the same way, but maybe you can do it, in a smaller way, but still sort of scratch that itch, as they say. So I think it's such a great message for people, even if they're not feeling the need to transition, thinking about some of the thoughts of, what did I want to do and what could I do? I don't think there's any harm in that.
No. And you just made me think. I say in my book, I've reflected a lot on my career transition and my grandparents. And my grandparents, and possibly yours as well, just come from a completely different generation. And they're no longer with me to ask these questions. But I wonder often, like, did my grandmothers want to dance on Broadway?
Yes.
Did my grandfathers want to, be the president of the United States? Whatever it is, just the fact that they weren't able to do that, I feel it puts that, I don't want to say pressure, but it gives us that opportunity to do those things for our grandparents.
Yeah.
and, try it. And I think it's interesting if you always thought maybe I want to be a ballerina, like why not take a ballet class?
Yes.
Or maybe you'll end up teaching little kids and just try it, like you said, because you'll never regret not just dabbling in it and indulge yourself. It can be just fun to think like, what if I did that thing? And you can just learn more about yourself. But I think we are given so many more opportunities than our relatives before us. So in a way, I do feel like let's try this in honor of them.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. Just explore it. Use curiosity, a curiosity lens, and just go forward with it.
Yeah.
What's one message? If our listener only takes away one message, what would you want it to be?
Give yourself grace and know that you're worth it.
Mm.
You're worth to take that moment to self-reflect and ask yourself how you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think once you just take that little moment, the wheels can start turning and maybe you can start getting yourself taking those baby action steps into the direction that you want to go. But you are worthy of that, and just give yourself grace and take that pause.
Yeah, I love that message. And I think taking those baby steps always gives you more confidence. If you take a step and it works out, or you learn more information, it gives you more confidence to take the next step. So finding those little baby steps is always a big win in my book, no matter what it is we're talking about.
Right.
Is there anything we didn't hit on that you'd want to put out there?
No, I think we hit on a lot. I think it really is about giving yourself that moment and then looking at your skills, appreciating all that you've done in the past, and then saying, how does that align to these roles that I'm thinking about? And I always love the idea of taking that thread and weaving it through and creating this larger career story of why did you go from this and now you're launching this business doing this. Like, it's so interesting to me to see these transitions. And I think it just shows that it is possible. And when you look at your skills and you think about what you want to go do, think about that thread and what leads you from one to the other. And it's, I think it can be inspiring and lead to that confidence as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also when you look back and really have it on paper and try to connect the dots in that way, I think it's a story you may not even realize until you start really doing that work. So that's so neat. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today and sharing all your insight. Tell me, where is the best place to find you and the work you're doing?
Yeah, well, my book is coming out this May and it is called Start Your Second Act. So you can go to startyoursecond.act.com. And from there, you can learn about the book. There's free resources and you can get to how to work with me and all of that as well.
Sounds great. And we will put all the links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Marianne, thank you so much for having me. This was great. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.